So, what happens when your government tells you everything's fine, but your wallet is screaming bloody murder every time you tap your card at Tesco? What happens when your mortgage payment jumps again while your boss gives you a 2% cost of living adjustment and a pat on the back? Welcome to the UK's mortgage war. Spoiler alert, it's not a war you're meant to win. This isn't just about high interest rates or a wobbly housing market.
If you enjoyed this breakdown, don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop a comment. Your feedback helps shape what we cover next, and you being here keeps the conversation going. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.
This is a full-blown economic thriller unfolding in real time with a twist, because according to some experts, this isn't a natural disaster. This is controlled demolition, a slow, quiet collapse where the middle class gets crushed, banks count their profits, and politicians sip taxpayer-funded lattes while telling you to tighten your belt. Let's rewind for a second. Just 3 years ago, the average UK household was £8,300 richer. And today, that's gone, vanished, evaporated into the economic ether. And it's not because you bought one too many meal deals or splurged on a staycation. It's because the cost of literally everything has exploded, while your wages have barely twitched. And despite the official inflation numbers painting a rosy 4% picture, people living in the real world know it's way worse than that. How bad, exactly? Try a 47% increase in real living costs since 2020. That's nearly half your purchasing power just torched. Meanwhile, wages have crept up a measly 5.7%. So yeah, when the government says inflation is under control, what they really mean is their version of inflation is. Yours? Not so much. But here's where it gets darker. Because those rising costs aren't just eating away at your weekly grocery bill, they're coming for your home. Mortgages are becoming financial death traps. Interest rates that were once 1% and change are now north of 5%, with no relief in sight. The Bank of England has basically said, yeah, we could lower rates, but let's just not. And that means monthly payments for millions are shooting up by hundreds, sometimes thousands of pounds. Every single month. Banks, oh, they know what's coming. That's why they've quietly been building war chests. Bad debt provisions are up over 340%. Translation, they expect a wave of people to default. This isn't a maybe. This is baked in. They're not trying to stop the ship from sinking, they're just moving the lifeboats closer to their corner of the yacht. And if you're thinking, well, at least the housing market will cool down and prices will drop, congrats, you're technically right. But not in the way that helps you. The market is crashing, properties are taking over for months to sell, repossessions are spiking, and buyers are disappearing faster than NHS dentists. But rents, those are going the other direction. In some places, they're up 30%. Landlords are bailing out, foreign investors are buying entire neighborhoods, and if you're not rich enough to buy a place outright, you're stuck throwing thousands into someone else's mortgage. Forever. Welcome to Generation Rent, now featuring deposits of £62,000, bidding wars on moldy flats, and a future where homeownership is basically an urban legend. Let's take a breath, because while all of this sounds like a bad economic fever dream, it's real. And it's not just mortgages or housing, it's everything. The job market, also in crisis. Official unemployment sits at a comfy looking 4.2%, but don't be fooled. That number leaves out millions who've dropped off the radar, people on zero-hour contracts, freelancers hustling for scraps, or those who've just stopped looking altogether. And let's not even start on youth unemployment. Unless you're ready to scream. Actually, let's start. Youth unemployment is at 18%. That's nearly 1 in 5 young people without work. Pair that with skyrocketing rent, job automation, and degrees that don't pay off, and it's no wonder entire generations are checking out. And AI? That's the cherry on top. Corporations are racing to replace human workers with code, bots, and cost-saving innovations. So if you're in admin, law, customer service, or any job with repeatable tasks, you might already be on borrowed time. Meanwhile, the same banks preparing for mass defaults are reporting record profits. Yes, while you panic about your mortgage renewal, they're rolling in cash. And if you think they'll pass those profits on to help ease the crisis, well, let's just say that's not really the vibe. Oh, and just to complete this lovely picture, our public services are basically running on fumes. NHS waiting lists, over 7.8 million. Local councils, filing for bankruptcy. Schools, underfunded and overcrowded. It's not just strain, it's structural collapse. And where's the government in all of this? Mostly focused on paying down a national debt so massive, even the interest is unaffordable. That's where your tax money is going, not to hospitals, not to teachers, not to firefighters, to debt servicing. Think of it as burning money to stay warm, except it's your future going up in smoke. And speaking of taxes, you didn't think they'd let you off easy, did you? Between stealth taxes, pension raids, and bracket creep, it's becoming clear that the average worker is basically being pickpocketed in broad daylight. And the worst part, most people don't even notice it happening. Your take-home pay shrinks, your bills swell, and you're told to be grateful inflation is cooling. Cool. And then, there's the global backdrop. Because yes, the UK economy is imploding, but don't worry, so is the rest of the world. China's facing a property market implosion, Europe's teetering on a debt crisis, and even the US is floating the idea of new tariffs that could squeeze trade even further. Shipping rates are tanking. Bond yield curves are inverting, which, if you don't speak finance, basically means the economic equivalent of your dog throwing up before an earthquake. All the signs are flashing red, and Britain, fresh off the Brexit boat, is wildly exposed. The most chilling part of all this, it's not that no one sees it. It's that those in power do, and they're positioning themselves to benefit. Offshore wealth, asset hoarding, quiet land grabs. This isn't survival. It's strategic conquest. The middle class is being systematically gutted, and in its place, a new feudal economy is forming. Renters and debtors at the bottom, wealthy asset owners on top. Everyone else, just trying to keep the lights on. Now, if you've made it this far, you're probably wondering, what are we even supposed to do? Well, that's the terrifying part, because the answer isn't obvious. The system isn't just broken, it's being broken on purpose. And unless people wake up, get financially literate, and start preparing like this is a Category 5 economic hurricane, they're going to get wiped out. That's not drama. That's data. The signs are already here. By 2025, we're looking at a full-scale recession, maybe the worst since the 1930s. A 20 to 30% property price crash, surging unemployment, and a lot of people who thought they were middle class suddenly realizing they're not. The rug is being pulled, and those who don't see it coming will hit the hardest. So what's the takeaway here? Besides scream into a pillow, it's this: no one's coming to save you. Not the banks, not the government, not your job, and definitely not your landlord. The mortgage war isn't just about interest rates, it's about control. And the people writing the rules already know who they want to win. Don't let it be them. Drop a comment if this chaos feels familiar. Are you dealing with a mortgage time bomb? Is your rent skyrocketing? Or are you one of the lucky few still holding on by the fingernails? And if you haven't already, subscribe, because this story, it's just getting started. Banks preloading for default while parading around with billion-pound bonuses. A government insisting everything's under control while entire towns turn into food bank capitals. Families losing generational homes, all while foreign investors snap up entire neighborhoods like it's monopoly night. It sounds dystopian, but this is actually happening. And no, it's not just the poorest being squeezed this time. The middle class is dead center in the blast zone. You know that classic idea of making it. Get a decent job, save up, buy a house, build a little life. That dream is rapidly being set on fire. Not all at once, not in dramatic kabooms, but in slow, agonizing increments. Rent that eats half your salary. Council tax hikes with nothing to show for it. Grocery runs that make you stare at your receipt in disbelief. Your lifestyle isn't changing because you're doing something wrong, it's changing because the system is closing in on you. The wild part, it's not just economics, it's psychological. You're being gaslit constantly by headlines that say wage growth is up, while you're dipping into savings just to afford chicken. By ministers who insist Britain is strong, while nurses strike for the right to eat. It's the surreal disconnect between official optimism and lived desperation. Like you're in a house fire, and the fire brigade shows up to say, actually, the flames are cooling. And let's talk about those flames. Interest rates, the silent arsonist in this whole thing. Once upon a time, low rates meant anyone with decent credit could buy a home. Now, you've got a whole generation of homeowners watching their mortgage triple overnight. Monthly payments jumping from £800 to £2,000 like it's nothing. Families who thought they'd secured stability are now panicking at every email from the bank. The cruelty is in the math. Because these aren't luxury homes we're talking about. These are starter homes, modest flats, semi-detached places in the suburbs. And now, they're financial bear traps. You either overpay massively, sell at a loss, or pray your lender offers some kind of extension before default becomes reality. It's not just a crisis, it's a slow-motion collapse of faith in one of the few things people thought was safe: owning property. Meanwhile, renters aren't getting a free pass either, with landlords exiting the market because, let's face it, being a small-time landlord in this climate is basically a horror show. Rent has exploded. Scarcity's driving desperation, and desperation means people are signing leases for places that should be condemned. £1,800 a month for a damp one-bed. Congratulations, you just got scammed with legal paperwork. It's getting to the point where moving back in with your parents isn't a fallback anymore, it's a survival tactic. Adults in their 30s and 40s are becoming boomerang kids, not because they're lazy or entitled, but because the numbers just don't work. And yet, society still sells the myth that if you just worked a little harder, saved a little smarter, you too could beat the system. Spoiler, the system isn't meant to be beaten. It's designed to filter wealth upward like a vacuum cleaner from hell. Now, while all of this is playing out at ground level, the financial elite are sitting pretty. Hedge funds are circling the housing market like sharks smelling blood. Private equity firms are buying up rental properties in bulk. Whole city blocks sold to overseas investors who will never live there, never see the mold in the bathroom, never care. Their goal: passive income. Your rent, your stress, their asset. And the government, let's just say, they're not exactly jumping in front of this train. Most policies right now either delay the inevitable or make it worse. Tax relief for developers, not first-time buyers. Renters' rights that sound nice in a press release but fall apart in the courts. Pension reforms that subtly shift the burden away from institutions and back onto individuals. Basically, the message is clear: you're on your own. And still they tell you things are fine. It's like standing in a collapsing building while someone plays smooth jazz over the intercom. You're surrounded by cracks, leaks, and falling debris, but hey, just ignore that. The GDP ticked up 0.3% last quarter. The sheer gaslight level absurdity of it all makes you feel like you're losing your mind. But you're not. You're seeing the reality for what it is: a system cracking at every seam, held together by PR and denial. Want more absurdity? Let's revisit the job market. Because even if you do manage to dodge the housing disaster, you're still playing Russian roulette with your career. Automation is coming faster than anyone expected. And not just for factory workers, everyone is on the chopping block. Paralegals, receptionists, insurance agents, even coders. AI doesn't sleep, doesn't unionize, doesn't need a break. And your employer, they love that. Sure, they'll host a lunch and learn about new skills for a changing economy. But what they won't tell you is that the job they want you to upskill into doesn't exist yet or already belongs to someone making half your salary in another time zone. So while corporations break earnings records and their CEOs cash £10 million bonus checks, ordinary people are cycling through 3 part-time jobs just to stay afloat. This isn't innovation, it's economic cannibalism with a tech wrapper. And still somehow it gets worse. Because public services, the last safety net, are unraveling in broad daylight. The NHS is beyond crisis mode. It's not just the waiting lists, it's the erosion of basic access. GP appointments that take weeks. Emergency services overwhelmed. Surgeries delayed to the point of danger. It's not a strain, it's collapse dressed in polite language. Education? Also circling the drain. Class sizes ballooning, teacher shortages everywhere, school buildings literally falling apart. The next generation is being raised in institutions barely held together by duct tape and goodwill. And then we act shocked when they feel hopeless about the future. There's no mystery here. It's a chain reaction. When wages don't rise, people can't afford homes. When people can't buy homes, rents surge. When rents surge, families can't save. When they can't save, they can't retire. When they can't retire, they rely on public services that are underfunded, which increases demand, and the whole thing implodes. It's a vicious cycle. And every turn of the wheel squeezes someone a little harder. And you better believe someone's profiting from every single spin. Here's the big picture. What we're living through isn't just a tough year or a rough patch. It's a realignment. A new economic order being carved out in the open, under the guise of crisis management. And the real danger: most people won't realize what's happening until it's already done. Until homeownership is a relic, stable jobs are extinct, and the idea of upward mobility is nothing more than a nostalgic meme. So where does that leave you? Well, maybe you're lucky. Maybe you bought your house 10 years ago and locked in a fixed rate. Maybe you've got a good job that still feels secure. Maybe you've got family support or some financial cushion. If so, great. But don't mistake comfort for immunity. Because this isn't targeting just the vulnerable anymore, it's creeping up the chain. And if you are struggling, if you're watching your mortgage double, or your rent eat your paycheck, or your job become less and less stable, you're not imagining it. You're not lazy. You're not a failure. You're in a system that's been rigged against you, and it's getting worse by design. But here's the twist. Awareness is power. Being angry, that's energy. Don't numb out. Don't scroll past it. Get smart. Learn how to move money. Figure out what assets actually hold value. Find your tribe, build your support system, and start making plans not based on what the system promises, but on what you can actually control. Because this mortgage war, it's just one front. There's a bigger economic war happening underneath it. And the sooner you see the battlefield clearly, the better your odds of surviving it. So yeah, drop a comment. Tell us how it's hitting you. Whether you're stuck renewing a nightmare mortgage, battling absurd rent, or watching your job quietly vanish into the cloud. Let's put this story together, piece by piece, person by person. Because if they want silence, let's give them noise. And if you want more breakdowns like this, subscribe. We're not here to sugarcoat the chaos. We're here to drag it into the light. Because someone has to. And look, we know this whole thing sounds like a giant, tinfoil hat, conspiracy-fueled rant, but here's the thing. You don't need a conspiracy when incentives are this broken. When the people pulling the strings benefit from collapse, you don't need secret meetings in dark rooms. You just need enough complacency, enough spin, and enough distraction. And boom, before you know it, the floors disappeared under you and you're told to build resilience as your mortgage burns you alive. But let's talk about that silence for a moment. Because maybe the scariest part of all of this is how quiet it is. There's no one out there screaming crisis from the rooftops, not in Parliament, not on your 6 p.m. news, and definitely not in those sleek financial ads promising smart investments and peace of mind. Instead, we get polite euphemisms, market correction, challenging conditions, temporary squeeze. Meanwhile, lives are unraveling in real time. Families that used to feel secure are suddenly skipping meals to pay the energy bill. Young couples saving for their first home are watching the deposit goal grow faster than they can chase it. And older homeowners who thought retirement was right around the corner, now cashing out pensions early to cover monthly expenses. Quiet, invisible suffering wrapped in middle-class manners. And for what? So banks can report another record quarter. So politicians can brag about avoiding recession by redefining what recession even means. It's not just insulting. It's infuriating. And yet we're still told to have faith. Faith in the market. Faith in policy. Faith in systems that, frankly, have shown time and again that they will throw you under the bus if it means boosting a quarterly report or trimming a deficit that only ever seems to balloon back the moment you blink. Here's a thought. Maybe it's time to stop waiting for things to get better on their own. Because if this mortgage war is proving anything, it's that the cavalry isn't coming. The people in charge are either too invested in the status quo or too far removed to even understand what's actually happening on the ground. And in that void of leadership, of honesty, of protection, it's up to us to sound the alarms, to look after each other, to get smart, to get loud. Because let's be honest, how much more can people take? How much longer can we keep pretending that it's fine to normalize £2,000 mortgage payments and £1,500 rents on £30,000 salaries? How long can we shrug off the vanishing jobs, the collapsing services, the hopelessness that's quietly eating away at an entire generation? The system's already decided who it's designed to save. Make sure you're not the one it's designed to forget. Speak up. Share your story in the comments. And if you're done waiting for permission to be outraged, subscribe. Because we're just getting started.